Meeting for May 8th, 2018. And please get everybody to stand and join me for the pledge to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Determination of voting members. Ms. Anderson, she is absent. Mr. Clay is absent. John Priestman is here. Jeff Edley.
Present.
Harry Moldenhauer. Present. Michael Myers.
Present.
Steve Nelson.
Present.
Derek Tremaine. Agenda item number 2 is the meeting minutes from April 10th, 2018 and April 24th, 2018. We'll separate those out one and one, or?
I'd do them separate.
Okay,
if
the
you would.
first motion will be on the April 10th meeting.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of our regular meeting.
Motion, Mr.
April
Nelson.
10th, 2018.
Second. I can't hear you, but the leaf blower. Sorry, Steve. Motion, Mr. Nelson. Second, Mr. Fedley. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next will be the approval of the minutes from April 24th, 2018.
Motion to accept the minutes of our meeting on April the 24th, 2018.
Motion, Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Mr. Fadley. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And Ms. Lowe is not here today, but we certainly want to recognize her for 30 years of service. Wow.
Yes.
She must have started work with the utility at what, 6, 7 years old?
I think it was, she started work study in middle school.
Middle school.
Yeah. In all seriousness, obviously, it's very important that you have an employee that stays for 30 years plus, and certainly she should be recognized.
Absolutely.
Without a
We
doubt.
will pass that on to her from the board.
Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, agenda item number 4, the consent agenda. Our consent agenda consists of agenda item 5, financial report, number 6, invoice from Eckler Engineering for the surface water treatment plant, and an invoice from McNabb Hydrogeologic Consulting. What's your pleasure?
Motion to accept the consent agenda of items 5, 6, and 7.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second by Harry. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 8, Northwest 36th Avenue Water Main Improvement. Mr. Hafer.
And this is just follow-up for additional water main work in the Bastion area for the board's position on Northwest 37th Avenue a few months ago that the board elected to install a water main on Northwest 37th Avenue from 36th Street down to the southern terminal point. Several residents that were right there on the corner, near the corner of 36th Avenue and 32nd Street, requested service. We can do it one of two ways. We can just extend the 2-inch water main over to them and get service, but that will not be future fees for the area, so there is a second option to include some 6-inch water main to provide some fire protection and future growth potential on 36th Avenue, and then tying that 6-inch in with a 2-inch water main up to 36th Street, which will complete the loop, if you will, in that area. As you see, there is a cost there associated with the project. Staff is approved. Staff is proposing that some of this cost would be deferred to the fire hydrant fund, with the rest coming out of the capital through the 2018 budget. There are a number of people who agree that have already expressed interest. There are others that we have not heard from, confirming that they're interested. We've heard from some that said they are interested, but the majority of them we haven't heard from. What we would propose to do is, if this is approved, we would tag those properties with the same construction cost that the original connections would be paid for some time period, say 3 years, that they elect to connect, they would still pay the construction cost. So that in a deal is where we would like to be able to grow the system for both current demand as well as future demand, and that's why you see the recommendation of both the 6-inch and the 2-inch water main construction.
We only have 3 confirmed right now. 8 letters were sent out, 3 confirmed.
3 have confirmed in a positive that said that they want it. I know there's at least one other that have said they are considering it, but they haven't committed to it. And then the rest of them have been, I guess, sort of wait and see mode, or they're no, but we haven't heard from them.
There's 23 lots, 14 are vacant, the rest are our target then, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so 44,750 to be paid out of the fire hydrant fund, and then the remaining 31,300 is what we're talking about for the 2018 budget.
Out of the
2018 budget.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, let me ask a dumb question. What's, on the ones you haven't heard from, what's the incentive for them to just sit and wait the 3-year period? I mean, why wouldn't they just wait the 3-year period
They very well may.
and avoid the additional cost?
They very well may do that. Now, what we can do, I mean, I have not pursued this, but we could pursue it through the county to say, okay, you've come up with this mandatory connection policy. If we put it in, is the county ready, willing, and able to move forward with making it mandatory that they connect? We can go, no pun intended, but we could go down that proverbial road with them to ask them if we put it in, would there be a mandatory connection policy?
I'm not against the project. It just seems like there's no incentive for the ones that you don't hear from to not do anything.
But Tom, that's true on a lot of projects. For infill, we've got people that have been in the water main for 10 or 15 years, and they finally come forward and say, okay, we want to connect, and it's just the connection, the standard connection fees that are in force at that time. There is no construction cost. This construction cost participation is a relatively new approach by the OUA for expansion. We historically, or I shouldn't say historically, a number of years ago, we would just put in the water main and connect people up, and we would bear the full cost.
Well, I like the idea of wanting to get more customers, obviously. I just don't like the possibility you don't hear from them, so they sit on their, don't do anything for 3 years, and then come in and say, okay, here we are, give us service. But I don't have an answer for it.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it would cost us more to connect them up in 3 years than if it was open and ready right then and there.
That is correct. And I should also point out that when I mentioned like Northwest 37th Avenue,
Right now.
Yes.
Northwest 37th Avenue, the board at that time elected to put it in at no construction cost for the residents.
Well, do we want more customers or do we want our construction cost? That would be my question.
That's a good question.
I think we want more customers.
Well, historically, if you look at it from the standpoint, the idea of having customers is you will have them there year in and year out. The other benefit that I would see from our standpoint, if we put in a water main and have nobody connect to it, I still have operational costs to go out there and flush the main and keep it, make repairs to it, and I've got no customers to help defer that cost. So clearly, by putting in a water main and getting customers, at least in this process, where the initial connections, some of the cost is deferred by those new connections, but long-term, the rest of the cost is going to be borne by the OUA and the OUA ratepayers.
All right, well, if I understand what I'm reading here, the initial project would be for fire protection. The the fire hydrants would come in and, with that first phase. The second phase would be for the customers. Am I correct with that, with a 2-inch?
Well, we don't really have it in phases. If we're going to construct it, the whole thing would be constructed. We would put in the 6-inch and the 2-inch water main as one project.
So both costs would be incurred initially. We wouldn't incur a second, it's called second project. You divide it as first project, second project.
This is the total project cost for the
Okay.
OUA board to consider.
Well,
It's
that's
just two funding mechanisms for it.
So we've got $59,000, or 40, 50, 60, 70, about $80,000 in fire hydrants we're putting out there right now and 3 customers.
Well, the total project is
76,000.
around 76,000.
Well,
And it provides, again, one more street, if you will. Initially, at least 3 customers, maybe more.
potentially 9. We definitely want to grow the system, so it's up to the board what we want to do.
You want to spend $80,000 for 3 customers?
Well, we definitely would have to start looking at this growth, and money's available, so
That-
time to look now or look later.
Well, the other side of the coin on my comment is, if it's available, I can't believe I wouldn't want to hook up. So, I mean, but it's a gamble either way, so.
Well, clearly, if you're out there on a well, I'm going to guess that many of those folks have some kind of water treatment system, with softeners and filters. So their monthly cost, is probably comparable to our monthly fees. The other trade-off is, unless they have a generator, if and when there is a power outage, hurricane, whatever, our system still provides them water. And whereas they would have to hook their well up to a generator to be able to get water service to their house. So there are some benefits, current benefits to the property. And the other option is, if you do have water available, there is a cost associated with that, a value associated with that to the property. And if you really went to it, you could go to your insurance company and probably could get a discounted insurance rate every year, because now fire protection is available to your property. So there are some secondary benefits, like you're mentioning, to the property owners that do have OUA water service to their neighborhood. And that is a factor of this $76,000 cost for the installation.
Well, let me ask you a question. Would it make a difference if we had 3 lots on there that were all the way, you're talking about having to go all the way down the whole block to get to them? Would it make a difference whether we do this project? You know what I'm asking you?
You got to go past other lots to get where you need to go.
Right.
Right, I know what you're saying.
Well,
Because I'm worried about the precedent. I'm worried about,
in essence, that's what we're doing on this project, because the 3 that are interested are right near the south end of this project. So we have to extend it 1,000 feet north with 2-inch water main to tie back into Northwest 36th Street. So we are essentially on the end where we're having the customers connect in. But I would still suggest to you, by putting in the 2-inch water main up the road, there is the potential that some of these other residents
will hook in.
will hook in, or if someone were to build on that vacant lot, they could save the cost of a well and a treatment system and still have service available. So it's one of those deals that it's a lot of money up front, and unless we go the route of trying to enforce a mandatory connection policy, the only thing I can share with you today is we have at least 3 confirmed customers that would join the system for this expense, with the understanding that the infrastructure will be in place to have other connections happen at some time in the future.
And I'm not quarreling, I'm not, I'm not quarreling with that at all. But I mean, it screams for the mandatory connection, obviously.
Well, the problem, we as we do these types of projects where it's piecemeal, like Whispering Pines is a great example. We're doing the whole neighborhood at once, and we can make the plans and put in the appropriate piping system and serve everybody. On another street in Basswood, it started with onesies and twosies. We extended the line a 2-inch to meet the new customer, and then when they got it, somebody down the road said they wanted water main, so we extended the 2-inch a little bit further. Before long, we had, an extreme amount of 2-inch piping in the ground that we could not extend the rest of the way, could not provide fire protection. So this board, through a staff project that we presented, is going back to put in another main on the other side of the road to provide fire protection down that road and extend the service. I don't like the issue where we get at the end of the day, we have 2 water mains on one road.
No.
So the reason why we're promoting this type of deal is it provides the infrastructure for appropriate growth in the necessary that we do have the 6-inch on 36th Street, 32nd Street, and in between those two, 36th and 32nd, we extend 2-inch water mains to serve everybody on that road. And so it does give us an ability to grow systematically through the whole streets.
I have a question, John. If the county was able to mandate the mandatory hookup in this area, I know we would just be collecting the basic fee, not the volumetric fee at that point of the people that didn't opt to hook up. Would that be for the vacant lot owners too, or just where there's a structure?
That mandatory connection policy obviously would impact the existing houses out there because
Not vacant property.
There is already under their land development regulations a stipulation that says if water is available and new construction comes in, they're already required to connect to the system. So for new construction, that would be it's already there. It's easy to do. If the extent is that we don't want to go to the 2-inch water main, we could just build the southern portion, which is a 6-inch water main. It'd still pick up those 3 customers, but that element where it stops with the red bar north of the 36th Street is a 2-inch. That wouldn't be installed.
So the six homeowners or owners out there that have not responded to date of the 9, they would, if it was mandatory hookup, they would have to pay the basic fee.
If we worked in conjunction with the county to implement the mandatory connection policy, if there was an existing home when that water main was built, they would be required. I'm just sharing with you, we have not gone that route, so it would be we'd be cutting new ground, if you will, if we actually went that way. So we could elect to do nothing. It's just that there was a request by these residents to provide service, and these are your options that you could do the 6-inch only, or you could do the 6 and the 2-inch, and we could be available to have other customers connect in at their request. What I would recommend not doing is going back to 37th Avenue and just extending a 2-inch water main over to those customers, because long-term, we would just be replacing that.
So in a nutshell, what's the recommendation?
The minimum recommendation would be just to do the 6-inch over to those 3 customers. If the other end would be to do the entire project, the 6 and the 2-inch, and spend the $76,000. So I would say at the very minimum, we ought to at least go over and pick up those 3 customers with the 6-inch water main.
And that would include fire protection, and the majority, that funding would come from the fire hydrant fund for that part.
The majority of it,
Majority.
yes, sir.
Okay.
We could always go back and add the 2-inch in if some of those people ever did respond favorably, you know, in that segment between where the red bar is on the second photo in 36th Street. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're all on the 6-inch, correct? So, I'm pretty sure they are. Because that's where we initially started looking at this. So at the very least, I would say the 6-inch water main is certainly the minimum preferred route to go to pick up those customers.
Well, that way, that would get away with that 3-year thing, and then we would do it as a customer hookup per, right? That, for the construction cost?
Well, we'd have to certainly we'd have to have a higher number of positive responses for that 1,000 feet of 2-inch water main before we would move forward.
Okay,
Right.
that makes sense to me.
But, you know, I kind of like to look at it, I'm going to be in the neighborhood, I'd rather tear it up once than to keep going back and doing it. But again, it means a whole lot more money with no confirmation that in that 1,000 feet of 2-inch water main would we get new customers. So if we're going for the better bet, I would say just install the 6-inch on the southern end, pick up those 3 customers.
Well, that way you've still got an incentive.
Right.
I like that. I like that idea. It's a piecemeal approach, but I think it's the right way to go.
It's a piecemeal approach with the understanding, looking at the bigger picture, we could tie onto it and grow the system, as opposed to just putting in a 2-inch water main to start with, and 6 months later, 1 year later, 4 years later, we got to tear it out and put it in a larger main.
Then the cost associated with your recommendation is how much?
You know, I don't have it broken out that way. I'm going to guess that it is going to be equal to that, very nearly to the $44,750. I could run down the hallway and go back to my office and get, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. But I didn't bring that to you. I'm going to go on a limb here and say it's the.
No, I was asking that to try and help these guys up here. So you're talking about the 6-inch line going up part way.
The 6-inch would be the wider red line on the second photo. It would tie in on 37th Avenue at 32nd Street. It would extend eastward to 36th Avenue, turn and go north up to that red bar. That would be the extent of the 6-inch water main.
And that would pass 8 lots that are currently occupied, or,
It would pass 8 lots. Some of them are vacant.
oh, some of them are vacant? Oh,
Yes, sir.
Now, the 6-inch is catching the fair share right now, and then the 2-inch would be for the 2 or 3 at the very end of the street, if I can see what I'm looking at here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well,
I think there needs to be an incentive for these guys to hook up while we're there, whether it be without this construction cost or, I mean, we're there, it's open, we want customers, let's figure out how to get them on there.
Well, the board has taken the option for this year, fiscal year, to continue the 75% reduction in the connection cost. So therein lies a tremendous incentive for anybody, anywhere on the system connecting in at a 75% reduction. In this case, that 75% reduction, so it lowers the water connection fee from like $745 to $200. The trade-off is, on the other hand, we're giving them a $1,300 construction cost associated with it. So if you're going to maximize the connections, the easy way to do that is to say, like you did on 37th Avenue, we will put it in at no charge, you shall connect. So that the impact, financial impact to them is that greatly reduced, 75%, by 75%, the connection fees that are normally associated with joining the OUA water system.
Any further discussion? Appears to me that we have three options here. We can run the 6-inch and do the 2-inch in the future. We can do it all in one shot for the 76,000 we were talking about, or we can do nothing. So it's one of those three decisions. We're not going to go anywhere. I think we'll just put it off and discuss it later.
Well, we're gonna need a cost anyway for the 6-inch. Doing just the 6-inch.
What do you think, Joe?
Does most of that money come out of the fire hydrant fund also?
Well, the estimated fire hydrant, which would be the 6-inch, is the $44,750. That could clearly come out of the fire hydrant fund because it does provide for fire protection. And if that were the choice, then those positive responses for connection, those folks would get water.
That's what I think we should go with. The money's sitting there, you can't use it for anything else. Just go ahead and put the 6-inch in, get them fire hydrants and get them on the water. But we can still expand later with the 2-inch if we need them.
Steve, you have any comment?
I know it's expensive, there's no question about it, but I'm one that believes if we want to expand the system, for all the years I've been on the board, we've been patching the areas. I think we need to go into one area, finish it, be done with it, and go on to the next area. The county and the city has to adopt a policy. If the line is there, you have to hook up. Give an incentive to the landowner to hook up now rather than later. And like you said, you'd rather go dig up the ground only once than have to go back in several times. I mean, I look and see what goes on in West Palm Beach when they have these developments that are on Jog Road, Boynton Beach, Delray, etc. They go in, the pipe is there, you have water, sewer, electricity, Comcast, whatever the case may be, going to every single home, regardless. It's there. And I think in order for us to expand the system, as I said previously, that is something we're going to have to bite the bullet on right now. I know it's costly, but at least everything is there. And you're doing it once. And you're not going from this side of the county to the other side and being all over the place. That's just my opinion.
Are you proposing then that we go to the county about mandatory hookup for this project, or?
I think mandatory hookups for the whole entire county.
Well, yeah, but.
I mean, we have to adopt, something has to be adopted.
They're reluctant to do that.
They're voters. They're voted in. They're not gonna, I don't think they're ever gonna budge on that. I agree with you 100%. But
I mean, you go out to California, San Diego, all right, before they can touch the mountains there, they're told that they have to have all of the facilities in regardless, and it's mandatory hookup. You have, look, Harry, the same way when we were told in Okeechobee Estates, you no longer have septic tanks. That's it. You have to hook up to the sewer system, plain and simple. There was an incentive to hook up early by cutting the costs, all right? Everybody was on the line. And that's something that we need to sit down with the county and the city and have some type of plan adopted where mandatory hookup is mandatory with an incentive given to the people.
Michael? An opinion?
I mean, I agree with them. I mean, but they're elected. I don't think we're gonna get them to agree with it.
think they've indicated a project by project they would work with us on, but yeah, countywide, I don't think that's, on the horizon. So as far as this, what is your thoughts on what we're talking about now? Didn't mean to put you on the spot,
No,
I'm
it's-
just trying to pull the board, get an idea where we are. Is this budgeted, John? You keep saying the 2018 budget. Is that the 17-18 or 18-19?
Our current budget, FY18, has a line item in there, generic line item. I believe it's $150,000 has been budgeted for new water main installation. To date, I think we have probably spent at least half of that amount on various projects, maybe a little bit more.
So we have the money. The money's budgeted to do this if we want to, without having to have the customer.
Well, it depending on which option you choose.
Right.
If you choose the 6-inch option, then that line item in the budget would not be used. We would go and defer to the fire hydrant fund, which is collected on a small fee every month off a water bill for means of fire protection, upgrades, new water mains, that type of deal. So it's a different pot of money, of which I believe by the end of the year, it's probably going to be in excess of $100,000 in that pot of money. So we would be talking about using $45,000 of that pot of money to install this 6-inch water main.
Well, that being said, I'm more on board to, let's just do the whole thing, the whole proposal here, get it done, get some new customers, what you proposed here.
The 6-inch.
The 6-inch and the 2.
And the 2.
Yeah. Put it in where we don't have to go back and reach out and get customers. That's kind of my thought. Let's do it. Put the infrastructure in, see if the customers will come. Work with the county, see if we can get a mandatory hookup in this project, 36th and 37th Street.
Clearly, if we have this 6-inch on the southern end on 32nd Street, we do have the 2 bookends. We have the 8-inch water main on 36th Street, this 6-inch, that 2-inch could go in right away, or if there is favorable responses in the future. So I just don't want to put in a 2-inch to serve these 3 customers, just to have it ripped out later. It's wasted time, effort, and money on our part.
So you like the 6-inch idea the best?
Yes, sir. That's the bare minimum. I would suggest that the board consider the 6-inch to provide fire protection as well as those 3 customers right now.
And that can be completely funded out of the fire hydrant budget, correct?
Yes, sir.
Which is already there. That's my inclination.
I agree with that.
Harry?
I tend to think that if we're going to get out there and start digging, that we probably ought to do the whole street. I mean, why tear it up twice,
All right, well, we've heard from all the different countries up here, so we'll entertain a motion. Who wants to be the first to step on that?
I make the motion to go into the area and do a complete the project with all the necessary piping.
Okay, motion by Mr. Nelson to do the project as proposed.
As proposed.
That would be the 6-inch and the 2-inch.
Yes.
Go in one time and
All one shot.
And $1,300, it would be the assessed fee for the construction of those that wish to connect.
Yes.
motion by Mr. Nelson.
Just as a backup, we were proposing that would be during a 3-year time period. Okay.
Motion, Mr. Nelson.
I'll second.
Second, Harry Moldenhauer. Further discussion?
This would by doing that whole project, it ties it back into Northwest 36th Street?
That is correct, sir.
And does that help with water quality? Does that keep you from having to flush?
It meets the criteria that we didn't create a dead end. We have it looped now.
Yeah, so that's another benefit that we hadn't discussed, is
Quality of the water.
tying it back into 36 does create for less maintenance maybe, and we're not going to have to flush that line like we would if we left it dead. With a 6-inch line that serving 3 customers is probably going to get stale. Isn't it?
Well, it's clearly a design question that even the regulatory authorities say that they would prefer not to see a dead-end line. And if you do install a dead-end line, they put a flush box at the end so that we can flush it. So in this case, it does provide the looped system, and then the construction cost, divided between the fire hydrant fund and the FY18 budget as described.
And less maintenance with the loop system.
It's certainly less maintenance, and if you look at the long term, if one of these customers did come in and say, yes, I'd like to connect now, it's right in front of their house as opposed to having to do another DEP permit and extending the line. So there is some cost benefit there.
Further discussion?
Yes. I don't like this idea at all.
Okay.
We sit here and discuss the whole thing about doing the 6-inch, and then we do a motion to throw the whole 2-inch in, do the whole thing, which makes no sense to me. I think we should do the 6-inch, we should use it out of the fire hydrant fund, and we should make a way to get rid of this $1,360 so that you can hook up more people. I totally disagree with running the 2-inch.
Further discussion?
I agree with Mike.
You talking about not charging them construction costs?
How are you going to get more customers if the ground is open? No, I don't want to charge the construction cost because I feel like it's open,
Yeah.
it's available right now. Even at $1,360, some of these homeowners may not have that right now.
But you don't want to run the 2-inch?
I do not want to run the 2-inch. For what reason would we would just want to loop it and maybe offer the 1, 2, 3, 4 houses at the end of the street? I mean, hoping and praying they're going to hook up because we're not giving them an incentive to hook up.
Well, I mean, if we're going to drop construction costs, they have an incentive. And we're only picking up 3 customers by running the 6-inch, and that costs more than running the 2-inch the rest of the way down the street.
Well, it costs another $31,300 according to John to run 2-inch.
Right, but I mean, it costs $44,000 to hook up 3 customers on the 6-inch, but
With
it
fire
only
protection.
only
With
$31,000.
fire protection that we already have the money set aside for.
Yeah, well, we already have the money set aside to do the 2-inch too. It's in our, in our fiscal, in our budget.
Very good points on all sides. Any further discussion? I'm going to call it for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
So there's 3-4, 2 against.
It's 3-2, and it fails for lack of
Fails for lack of majority
So
vote.
if I understand, the alternative that may be a motion by one of you would be to install the 6-inch water main at no construction cost to those benefiting from the construction, and the monies to come from the fire hydrant fund.
I make that motion as stated by Mr. Heffernan.
Motion by Mr. Fedley,
I would second.
second by Mr. Myers. Further discussion? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is that a 4?
I don't know that I heard a no. I saw a shaking of a head.
I saw a head shake. That. Mr. Fedley?
My motion, I'm thumbs up, let's do it.
Nelson?
Better than nothing.
Thumbs up.
I second it.
I'll go for it.
Okay, 5-0.
So the issue then, just a 6-inch water main, funding to come from the fire hydrant fund, no construction cost to those benefiting from it. They will still pay the regular connection fees of like $700, but we could work a payment plan with them to get that down to a marginal.
That being said, is there any way possible you could set up a meeting with yourself, myself, and the Board of County Commission chairman to discuss behind closed doors a mandatory hookup?
They clearly do have that policy. They've agreed to it. They're going to do it for Whispering Pines. What I would suggest on something like that would be that after we get Whispering Pines started, which is later on this agenda, we could pick another area that we could go into, say, 4 or 5 streets, and then pursue DEP funding for that, where we do a whole 5 or 6 streets. And I think the county might be more, I can't speak for the county, but I would guess they might be more responsive if we do 5 or 6 streets than parts of one street.
But that wouldn't include this project.
That would not include this
I was
project.
just
We
discussing.
can still
this.
meet, I'll set it up, but.
It was my understanding that they were receptive to mandatory hookup on a case-by-case basis at one time. They'd just like to have a discussion and open the door and see if they're still receptive. Moving on. Agenda item number 9, CPBG Whispering Pines Water Management Project, Water Main Project.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this is just a recap of what we had to do at our special meeting here on, in a couple, just 10 days ago, or whenever it was, 2 weeks ago, where the board provided the final ranking for the bids on this project. That information was forwarded to the state level. At the time this document was put into your board package and delivered to you, we had not heard back from the state. As of yesterday morning, I did get an email and a copy of the letter is at your place setting where they have approved the package and were available to move forward. If I remember correctly from the last meeting, the chairman or executive director were authorized to move forward with the construction documents, notice to proceed, if we got that. I'm just bringing it back to the board for their understanding that the approval has been granted at the state level, and are we still good to go with the notice to proceed and kick this project off?
Anything change?
Tom, now that we do have the letter from the state, do we want to do a new motion just for the notice to proceed to move forward, or we'll just carry on from the previous discussions that we've had?
I don't know that you need to do anything because it's already been approved contingent on getting the approvals, because all we need to do is give a notice to proceed.
That would be the next step, the process that we do have to go forward with is the notice of award, and then they do the bonding and putting all that together, and then once we get all that paperwork in hand, then we give them the notice to proceed.
Well,
and that would be the last step prior to going to construction.
Okay, well, the other thing was the authorization was given to execute the documents,
That is correct.
the contract.
That is correct.
So
Provided that the state approved, and the state, we do have that letter now.
you've got that. So now the authorization has been given to execute the contracts. Now, whatever step would be required prior to the issuance of the notice of commencement would be governed by the process.
That is correct. We would need to get performance and payment bonds and insurance, and they have several, they being PRP Construction Group, have several things that they have to provide us paperwork-wise.
But all that's governed by the terms of the
That is
contract.
correct. They're going to sign the agreement, we got to sign the agreement, and then when all that paperwork is in place, we then issue the notice to
Then you would
proceed.
issue the notice, and that's already been approved by the terms of the contract, which
That
is
correct.
authorized.
The
Okay.
notice to
I don't-
proceed is when it all starts, the time element, the time clock of X amount of days to get the project done.
As of now, I don't think this board needs to take any further action on it.
Okay, so we'll move forward now that we have the notice from the state.
We'll just execute and move on.
No, there's just really a recap of where we're at, that we did get the notice, the approval notice, the fees, money's allocated, and we're ready to get started.
Thank you, John. Agenda item number 10, representation by Thorn Run Partners.
To bring us up to speed, I think it was in 2010, thereabouts, that this board signed an original agreement with Alcalde and Fay to represent our interest at the federal level, either for regulatory oversight or financial benefits, either through USDA or earmark, or whatever at the federal level. At that point, it was a Mr. Jim Davenport who was our point of contact with Alcalde and Fay. We had at least, over the course of the period, we've had at least one trip to Washington where we got to meet our representatives on their turf, be that congressman or senator, House of Representatives or senators. Mr. Davenport, as my agenda item states, has resigned his position at Alcalde and Fay and moved to Thorn Run Partners. Alcalde and Fay, as far as an official notification, has not reached out to the OUA to share that information with us. Mr. Davenport has shared it with me directly. I would certainly recommend that if the board is receptive to keeping a federal lobbyist on board, that we do cancel our contract or agreement, if you will, with Alcalde and Fay and move forward with Thorn Run Partners. However, rather than an open-ended agreement, I would certainly like it tied to some kind of time limit to see what kind of response or abilities we do get back from Thorn Run Partners, as opposed to an open-ended agreement that continues on and on and on. So at that level, it gives us the idea of whether it's the Treasure Island project or whether it's Okatani or the southwest section where we talk about many, many millions of dollars. If the federal government is to come forward with money towards a septic to sewer conversion, it is important to have someone in that area, Washington, that can look out for our best interest and move forward. Otherwise, it may not be money well spent.
Got a question, Tom. Does Mr. Davenport have a non-compete clause with respect that if he resigned from Alcalde Fay that he cannot approach?
I really don't recall. I mean, we've had that firm on board for a number of years now, and I don't remember whether we did an RFP on that process or not.
I'm unsure. I think it was, I don't know the answer to that. As far as a non-compete clause, I would think that would be in the best interest of Mr. Davenport to tell us that up front, and he wouldn't have pursued an agreement with Thorn Run Partners. So again, it's an assumption on my part, but he has not mentioned that to me.
I'd rather not assume anything and find ourselves in a legal battle. I mean, if he doesn't have it, that's great, fine. I would just like to make sure that there is no conflict of interest.
By contract with Alcalde and Fay, if we send a letter of cancellation, are we responsible for the contract for the coming year, or is it terminated as
There's a
of
30-day cancellation.
30-day cancellation? Thank you.
At the very least, I would suggest that since they haven't reached out to us to appoint someone new to be our contact within this firm, however big it is, I would still suggest that we need to cancel that contract or agreement.
So we need to motion first to cancel the contract with
Yes,
Alcalde.
and it is cancelable, yes.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Moldenhauer.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bradley. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we need to
I
execute.
got sidetracked. Who made a motion?
Harry made the
Gary
motion.
made the motion, Jeff second.
Thank you.
It seems like every month we paid a Caldy a check or something. Every time I turn around, there's an invoice for a
It's
Caldy.
like $3,000
Yeah.
a stinking month, isn't it?
That's what the side discussion was down here. They didn't even send us an invoice this month,
I
so
mean, I just,
it's like we get on their automatic mailing list for updates of the firm, but those are automatic. But there is nobody there that has grabbed the reins and said, who were Jim's clients that are left, and who do we assign to be their point? There's just nothing from it.
Okay.
So that's why I would say, if that's the case, we don't need to send them a check if they
I
don't
agree.
send us.
We've sent enough checks.
Yeah, we do. That's expensive. Okay, part two, execute the Thorn Run Partners proposal. You wanted to put a stipulation on that, or just,
Well, I would suggest, rather than an open-ended one like in the past, that we put a finite time limit, say like by the end of the year, if all of these things that is in this letter that they're pursuing, Army Corps of Engineers or direct allocations, earmarks, if none of that happens, or on the other side, we as a company do not see the need for any financial support of a big project or federal legislation, then whatever the fees are, we don't need to have an open-ended agreement where we just keep sending them a check. So,
I don't know that you need that because the contract is cancelable on 30 days' notice. I mean,
I'm not
if it
sugge-
gets unsatisfactory, we hold a meeting and cancel the contract and give them 30 days' notice.
I'm not suggesting that we put that in the contract. I'm suggesting that for the OUA benefit, you might ask me to say at the end of the year, John, give us an update as to where we are and whether or not.
Well, you can do, they're going to be doing that anyhow, I would
Yeah.
think.
It's not contingent to executing the proposal. You just need to remind us, or let us know what's happening.
I'm just suggesting I'm uncomfortable with an open-ended deal where we continue to pay them like we have in the past
Okay.
without some return on our investment. It is a lot of money at the end of the year.
Okay.
And if we're not going to utilize, if we're not going to be able to utilize their services,
We ought to get out of
keep
it.
them on board.
Are you suggesting that we haven't gotten the service we paid for in the past?
No, sir.
No. That you just don't want it to be,
Open-ended forever and ever and ever.
okay.
Okay, so do we need the motion to execute the proposal?
You do, yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
If that's the
that
pleasure of the board, yes.
Execute the, yeah, I see the way you scratched your name out and put my name in here. What's going on?
Well, also that they had the wrong name up at the top, that Tom caught, and we
Yes.
also changed.
They had Melbourne, you'll notice up there, the Melbourne Airport Authority.
Yeah.
They had authority right, but wrong.
You know, they just got the wrong authority.
All right, we need a motion then to execute the Thorn Run Partnership proposal and directing the board chair to execute.
Yes.
Okay,
Motion is sent.
motion, Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Mr. Myers. On discussion?
Is that the recommendation from Mr. Hafer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
More further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Wait a minute. I saw a hand come
No,
up.
I was just going to point out that it's practically a 30-day contract.
Okay,
It's open-ended, but it can be terminated on 30 days' notice.
I see that. All right, once again, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And we will correct the heading to show Okeechobee Utility Authority.
I don't mind spending their money, Mr. Conley.
And Bill Melbourne too, right?
And I can be anybody you want me to be when I sign it. All right, public comment. Well, we packed the house today.
Well, they're all watching on videos.
Well, you got a full house.
I don't know, are they going to watch it on video?
Got the popcorn and soda to watch them show.
Item from the attorney, Mr. Conlon.
Two comments and a question. I believe the sale on the Coker parcel was completed yesterday. I know we signed all of our OUA executed all of their closing documents on Friday, and I FedExed them to the closing agent. And I got yesterday I received an email asking, do we use the same wired fund instructions to send the proceeds to the OUA? And I responded, yes. At this point, I have no reason to believe that the transaction didn't close. I just can't sit here and say 100%, but I have no reason to believe it didn't occur. The second thing was going back to the Nubbin Slough parcel, our LVA. We've got one little issue that still needs to be resolved there, and that's a proration of the rent. We should have prorated the rent as a part of the closing, but I understand, I got to get the executive director's attention over here, that there is a issue about taxes that were not paid, which needs to be offset against that rent proration, and the difference then would be sent back to the buyer. John, have you calculated I'm talking about the Nubbin Slough parcel?
Yes, sir, we're prepared to send a check to them. I think it's in the amount of like $5,700, which represents from September 1st to the closing date, that remaining portion all the way through August 31st, that prorated amount we were going to send back to Los Potros.
Okay. Now, the other
As a
thing,
separate check.
and I didn't want that involved in our Coker transaction. Had no business being in that. What about the taxes?
I was just asking George here, they did send us a check for the taxes.
Okay, so the taxes were paid.
That's been handled.
Then it's a clean proration. All we do is
Yes,
owe
sir.
them the unearned part of the rent as of the closing.
From the closing date through August
To the-
31st, it's like $5,700, something
Okay.
like that. It's very easily to calculate out of the $18,000 that they originally paid us, that we will send them a check for.
And I guess that's part of the closing process, and I think the board needed to know about that. The only other thing, I've got a question. Has anything developed on the Goodbread development parcel out east of town?
I talked to one of the partners Saturday, I think it was Saturday, and they're still interested, but in the next breath, he was saying, we were kicking around an idea of increasing the lot size and making them more like 2-acre parcels instead of half-acre. And I said, tell me what you want to do, and then we'll formulate the developer agreement and get started with the design and construction of a water.
Well, I don't know how we would have anything to do with that.
I think it depends upon which partner.
It's still going to cost money to put the thing in, so I mean,
Well, if
okay.
they go with the 2-acre lots, their debate was, maybe we don't need water. You tell me what you want to do, and then we'll work up a memorandum of understanding or developer agreement with whatever needs to be brought back to the board.
Okay, because I hadn't heard anything on it. I've got some concerns about it, but I'll deal with it when it comes up.
Well, we need a finalization from them what they're going to do, and then we can move forward.
That's all I've got.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but have we heard anything about Mr. Rocky?
No. Ball's in their court,
Still,
still,
this has been going on.
which is good. I'd rather the ball be in their court.
Okay.
Is there a time limit for them to respond, or?
There was a time limit, and I don't know whether that's going to be pushed or not. There's a way to file a motion to compel, and in a way, it's nice that the attorney's fees are not being run up on that, so I don't know that I'm uncomfortable about it. They're the plaintiff, they're the ones that should be moving forward, and if they're not, it's not costing us anything.
That was my concern of how his clock is still ticking on us, but as long as, I guess he's not working on it. we're-
That's right, that's,
Okay,
don't kick the sleeping dog,
I got you. Thank you, sir.
indeed.
Mr. Heck.
Which, for the record, my opinion on Rockies is slightly different, but I was told not to kick the sleeping dog, so I'll leave it at that. In your board package, there are several issues that are for information only. I can tell you there would be some discussion on two different things. We'll start with the easiest one first. You had received several documents pertaining to tank aesthetics or artwork on the proposed 3 million gallon tank under design at the surface water treatment plant. That tank's location is right out on State Road 78. It's going to be 35, 40 feet in the air. It's going to be highly visible. We could have the outside exterior of the tank to look like any other tank, white, Marsite, plain tank. There are options, and each option comes with a price tag from a very simple, simplistic artwork design to something that is actually incorporated in the tank exterior, more of an architectural type feature, are all available. And it, like I say, the price range from several thousands of dollars to potentially $200,000 for these exterior modifications. I bring it to you now because I only gave this to you as an email, and this could be a public forum, if you will, as to get feedback from any of the board as to whether we should or should not move forward with any kind of artistic or aesthetic value to the tank. How can we do that? Well, one option might be to appoint a board member along with staff to set up maybe a community panel to get information back as to how we can do that. But it's wide open at this point, and I just leave this as either here under executive director or under items from the board as to what direction that y'all might be able to share with me as to what, if anything, we should do.
Well, I don't think we want to spend a whole lot of money on architecturally modifying it, but it would be nice to have, some decoration on it. I wonder if there'd be any grants available to put a mural on it or something.
Well, that may be an option. Again, it might be something where if we involve somebody in the community that is very familiar with that, either here in this community or somewhere else where they have a lot of paintings, murals, they might be able to give us some guidance on that. I'm unaware of it, but that's not within my aspect of knowing where that might be. We could certainly pursue that. I mean, it could be anything from, if you've seen the sound barrier walls on the interstate or the turnpike where there's birds or animals or, bass capital of the area, a fish, or the heritage of the settlers, either Seminoles or early settlers of the area. I mean, there's any number of aspects. All of them come with a cost. Now, I have reached out to one art studio that has put other artwork on storage tanks. I have not heard back from them as far as an idea or a cost, but that's the extent of my ability for artwork to try to find something.
What I'd recommend is we do exactly what you said in your statement. Pick a board member to meet with staff and go out and get county input, look into funding, look into grants, look into sponsorships and all that, and bring it back to us with what their findings are. We don't have to do this now. Construction hasn't even started yet, right?
We haven't. We're not done with design plans, but we don't have a long period.
Right.
I mean, we have several months maybe to come up with something, but we do need some direction, and I can tell you there's at least one missing board member who said that he would be willing to do that.
And that's the way you pick your volunteers when they're not here. So I'd like to appoint Mr. Clay to head up that, and he could meet with staff and look out into the
I did share with him, because he was missing, that he might get an appointment while he was gone.
And that being said, I think he would be a perfect guy. He's born and raised here. He knows people. He knows the ranchers and people with interest in the community. I think he'd be a good pick for that, and he would do a good job. If he says no, then we'll revisit it, but I don't think he will. I'd make the motion.
Well, we'll investigate that. I will let him know that that's the board's direction, that clearly he did not vote no on that aspect, and so he was appointed, and we'll work forward to see what we can bring back to the board as ideas and thoughts, and then the board could provide direction which way we go.
And you know the timeline of the project and the engineering, you could set a timeline when to get this information back to us.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of avenues that you can pursue. Excuse me. But take in consideration maintenance. If it's going to be a mural, you
Well-
may want to consider the possibility of wrapping it.
Well, clearly, my favor would be to stay away from a mural, because there would be that additional cost, either if not annually, periodically, to refurbish it and make it look good. But if it was something like relatively simple artwork, like design of some animal, bird, whatever, it might be relatively easy to keep up with. But again, that tank is going to be out there on State Road 78, highly visible. It would make a very positive statement for the community to have that out there, other than, Okeechobee Utility Authority on the tank. Now, I would tell you that if you left it up to me, what I'd always propose is to put "Welcome to Lakeport" on the top of the tank, so that everybody that's looking from GPS satellites and aircraft would be lost when they think it's Okeechobee that says Pahokee on it. But that's just my
That's just cool.
different angled opinion on what we should do. But be that as it may, I will let Mr. Clay know that he has been
And my vote is Florida Gators on the side with the no.
Again, I would be very favorable to that, but
I don't think
evidently
Mr. Clay will
there's
be.
other folks that may have a different opinion as to what the color should be.
Okay.
The only other thing I could tell you, that at your place setting is a initial look at the FY19 budget. Once again, as in years past, this is the first look at it. We intend to have a public hearing at the June board meeting, where you will formally get to adopt a preliminary budget as we work forward through the summer, trying to get to a final budget. Again, as in years past, both George and I are available either by telephone or in person. If any board member wishes to come in and talk with us specifically about the budget, to learn the do's and don'ts, and where we're turning, we would be happy to do that over the coming 30 days before the June meeting, and go into detail with you, either by telephone or in person. We're prepared to go over any of that right now. If you want to hear any highlights, typically this is your first look at it. You may want to look at it first, and then we go over it in June. But I'll leave that up to the board if you wish to hear something about it today. Otherwise, we'll spend the next few weeks talking to you individually, and be prepared to talk in detail, in depth at the June meeting.
First, go take this home with us?
Yes, sir.
Get us homework, huh? There you go.
Yes, sir, Mr. Conlon.
How much longer do our special assessments go? I could look in the budget and tell, but aren't we getting close to the
We're
end?
only down to 2, and I think it's like 2 more years on Steve Myers, and 1 or 2 more years. It's in the budget. I think there is something in there, but
Because I need to give the letter to the property appraiser's office. I'd rather go on and get that done.
they are going to be for next year, so we can get you the properties, but it's only 1 or 2 more years. I think it's down to
I
around
know it's getting
$50,000 or
close.
$60,000, if I remember correctly, that we get in on the 10-20 developer agreements.
Anything else, sir?
Nothing from me.
Any items from the board?
John,
Yes.
how are we set with regard to the hurricane and our generators and storage of diesel fuel?
We're under the idea that it's like climate change, and we're going to, no, I'm just kidding. We have, not so much right now, But by June, late this month in June, we start ordering our long-term need items like breakers and fuse, electrical items that usually take a month or more to come in. So we are in the process of going through our cabinetry, looking at what kind of breakers and breakers and the different elements that we need from an electrical standpoint. We recently completed having all of our the fuel tanks on our electrical generators, either permanent or transportable. We recently had all of those flushed and cleaned out so that the fuel shouldn't be an issue. As you're might be aware, once you have this diesel fuel in tank, there's dirt, debris, water. There's just general crud in there. So we had all of those flushed and cleaned in preparation for use over the hurricane season. So there are things that we've done in advance of the hurricane season as we progress. That's the long-term way out things. As we get closer to the June, July timeframe, then there are other elements that kick in, like topping off fuel tanks and getting other provisions that are going to be necessary, flashlights, that type of deal that we'd be pursuing in the June and July timeframe. So it's a evolving process that we go through with the calendar year. So right now, the only thing that is out there that is questionable from Hurricane Irma, we still have some damage that has not been repaired that we do need to move forward on, to try to affect those repairs before the July season gets upon us.
Other items from the board?
All the trees have
Back to
been,
that storage tank issue, we may want to check with the local high
They
schools
still
and the art
alive?
club, and they have some good ideas. And maybe able to do something, but very cost effective. Certainly worth asking.
Yes, sir.
say all the trees have been planted and irrigation set up and
Yes, sir, they're all in. I can tell you the only minor issue we had was that in planting the trees, the treatment plant supervisor asked if we could go get a handful more trees to plant in another area. So there may be 4 or 5 trees that we may go back either through the vendor that supplied the trees initially or at a local grower to plant in out there. But they're in. I was pleased with the size of most of them. They're in the 8 to 10 foot range. They look very healthy and stable. They're in the ground.
Further items from the board?
Yes.
Yes, Steve.
Mike. Steve. Sorry. I had 3 things. Thank you for the pictures. I appreciate the update on the trees. And it looks like there was a cypress tree of some sort in there, or was that?
That was a Leland cypress.
Leland.
I think some of those were swapped out for the red cedars.
Perfect. Okay. Second thing is the time of the meeting. This is obviously to everybody. For myself, for Derek, and maybe, I'm not going to speak for Tommy, but it would be better for me if we could do this meeting in the afternoons. Because what ends up happening for me is I have a construction crew that has to go to another crew, or like today, my guys took off and I had to take off today to do this meeting. It worked out that way today. So I didn't know if the board would consider moving this to an afternoon
I
instead of the
believe the
morning.
only constraint we would have would be getting with Sharon Robertson to see if the building is available. Is there any other constraints, Tom, do you know?
The only concern I've got, this meeting and the school board meet the same day. My school board meeting right now is at 6 o'clock in the evening, so there's a good cushion there. So it depends on when you did it. I don't have a problem with a 2 o'clock or a 3 o'clock, or most of our meetings don't last more than a couple of hours, so.
It's just something to think about. And the third item I had was the place. Obviously, we came here to get the audio and the video and supposedly people. So, I don't know that it's necessary to be here, just kind of my opinion. I don't know if we change it to the afternoon, would we get some community members in here? It's just something I'd like us to think about a little bit.
We have done the studies, and we do have the amount, the dollar figures it would cost to have the audio and video put into our boardroom over there to be compliant with the interlocal agreement. So we could dust that off and look at it again, couldn't we, and see, let the board make a decision?
I'm sure it hasn't changed. It would still be about the same value. I think the upper limit was around $15,000. One of the things that we did put off on, why we put off doing it was if we do the building renovation, it would be easier to incorporate the audio, video, equipment, lighting, whatever might be needed in the building renovation. But, you know, as far as the meeting times, we can do it at any time, whether it's afternoon or evening. The only thing I would suggest to the board is our public advertisement was for the meetings for the year. We could re-advertise those new meeting times and dates or location, whatever the board wishes to do, whichever way they wish to do it.
I've been very pleased with the new place. It worked out a lot better than I thought, but it did not accomplish what we were trying to accomplish, I don't believe. Do we have any way to check to see how many people are watching online? Hundreds of thousands? Are we movie stars?
30,000.
How many?
30,000.
30,000? Okay, guys, we gotta brush our hair next time.
We have one subscriber.
That's what Christie tells us.
Yeah.
We have one person that liked it or subscribed.
That's what I heard once. There was only one person.
Well, John, you ought to bring up the comment you and I were having privately before the meeting about, we don't have all the funds in hand yet, but the placement of those funds resulting from the sales of the lands.
Well, and again, thank you for reminding me, and certainly we can talk that. We did sell we think we have sold all three parcels that were up for contention. Both the downtown parcel is sold, the LVA parcel is sold, and we think the Coker parcel. At some point in time, and I would hope at the June board meeting, the board can provide us any kind of direction as to where they want that money placed and what kind of fund and what they want to do with it. And so we would be prepared at the June meeting to hopefully come back with several options that you could consider or come up with your own option as to what to do with the money. But it should be in the order of, say, $1.8, $1.9 million is what we're talking about. Somewhere thereabouts.
Just because we got a windfall doesn't mean we have to spend it, guys.
No,
We need to
no,
be very
right.
But the important deal is if we don't, in my opinion, if we don't put it towards something, into a fund, that it may get nickel and dime, 50,000 here, or 20,000 there, or whatever. And somewhere down the road, you look back and where did all the money go? So I think if we can at least say that we are going to put it in the capital improvement fund or somewhere, we at least know where it's parked and where it's waiting for use.
Will you please bring that back and some options to us next month?
Certainly we'll have a number, and then we can go from the extreme of do nothing to the other extreme of whatever that may be.
Okay. You want to step forward?
Well,
it doesn't hurt to try things, man.
I don't mind to make a motion to move the time, but I don't want to interrupt your schedule. Like, if you're doing the school board too, it's at 6, right?
It's at 6.
So if the latest would be if we started our meeting at 3, 4 or 5, that gives us an hour buffer.
Well, if you wanted to move it to the evening, doesn't mean that you can't move it to a Wednesday, right? I mean. you
Well,
can
that's
move
true
it to-
too.
Well,
you can-
it depends on where you hold the meeting.
Well, if we have a time and a day,
if
then we
we-
can reach out to the county to find out the availability of.
That's what was behind my comment. If we were doing it in our own building, it really wouldn't involve any other agency, so.
Clearly, if you choose after hours, there should be a cost associated at the county level for that expense. So that would be the difference, moving it from a 8 to 5 time frame to 7 p.m. But if we had the expense of installing audio video equipment at the OUA boardroom, that kind of drops by the wayside.
Okay, before we go any further, I'd like to ask, anybody on the board have a problem with moving the meeting times?
It depends on where you want to move to.
Yeah,
What about 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Would that be a problem?
Yes. That's all right. For me, I don't care about that. It just cannot be after hours because I take care of special needs.
Sure.
I agree with that.
I have a life too. So Steve would have some issues with that, wouldn't be able to do it, but,
Okay. State and federal regulations.
Is there a time that would fit you better, Steve?
In the morning or the evening. I mean, it's the only profession where I have to be present. If I'm not present, then the store has to shut down.
Pretty draconian.
now that is an issue.
would later in the morning help you, or?
No, it doesn't. The morning, we start at 7, we work 7 to 5, so. I'll deal with it.
11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11?
No, I'll deal with it for now.
Okay.
We'll table it. I just wanted to see where everybody else was at.
Okay. Any further discussion from the board? Being none, we're adjourned. Thank you, Jeff.